Hi everyone, we are going to make some amazing stenciled cards today, and this is part one of a series where we're going to use stencils in all different ways. The reason I want to do a series on stencils is because there are so many ways to use them and they're relatively inexpensive. So stencils usually start around $7 and they can go up to $20 if it's layering stencils, those types of things. But I'm going to show you how to use basic stencils in several different ways. We're going to make 4 different cards. We're going to start from easy, go up to a little bit more difficult and advanced levels, but you're going to love it. So make sure you stick through the whole video to see those. I also want to say that 82% of people who watch my videos are not subscribed to my channel. Do you know what would happen if all of you subscribed? It would be so amazing and I would appreciate it so much. So would you please just hit the subscribe and like button, and then we'll get right into this series. Have a great day. So pull out whatever stencils you have. I'm going to be using some Altenew stencils, some Fawn stencils. I just pulled out stencils that I have, and I'm going to show you ways to use these that are going to create lots of different unique cards. We're going to go over lots of examples. I'm going to briefly pop them in here. I did use the bubble or the circle stencils in a couple of different ways because I want to show you that just 1 or 2 stencils really can change the look of your card. And then we'll do one card that is all out using tons of stencils to get this really cool look right here. Okay, so I'm going to go over some basic, just how you do stenciling. These stamp and stencil mats, which are made by lots of different companies, are really nice because it sticks to your paper and really holds that down. I also really love using this waffle flower media mat. You can tell that mine is well loved. I do use the blue Scotch painter's tape to hold things down, and it's always nice if you're going to be doing a lot of stenciling to have a little bit of Dawn water and a bucket that you can just drop those stencils in, because you don't want to keep from cleaning them for too long, and that gives you a place to put them on your desk. We're going to start with these 2 stencils, and I'm going to show you the difference in which one you put on the bottom and which one you put on the top, and how it makes the card look different. So you want to find a stencil that has a lot of detail, and you want to find a stencil that has some open spaces. So we're starting with the larger stencil down, and what I love about stencils like this is when you're going to do something like a rainbow, which is what I'm going to do today, you've got some kind of guidelines. I know that I need about 2 of the rows of bubble wrap there. The stencil is called bubble wrap. 2 of the rows per color with a little overlapping into the 3rd. And I've counted this and measured it out. I'm going to use 5 colors. And so now I'm going to do my yellow color, and it's going to overlap a little bit with the pink to create an orange. So you get that extra little color effect without actually having to go in there with the orange. It's a very nice look. These inks are by Altenew, and they are dye inks, so they are not opaque, but they do blend really well. You want to wait till they're completely dry before you do the next level of stenciling. But we're starting with this bottom layer, and I want you to look at how you place your stencil on a paper. So you want to think about where your white spaces are. So on this stencil, the white spaces are in between these big bubbles. So you can see we'll have white space behind this. How big that white space is makes a difference when you start layering. Some people want more white space, they want less, they want the stencils to cover all of the white space. So it kind of depends on what you're going for as to how that's going to impact. And so that's why today I really wanted to show you what it looks like doing it both ways. So we'll start with the biggest stencil down first with the smaller pattern on top. And no worries, I will include all these links in the description so you'll know all the colors that I used. Now we're going to use this smaller pattern of circles, and we're going to put it over the top. So do not lift your other stencil off unless you do not want white space. That stencil is protecting the white space. One way you can get this to stick easier, I tend to use a lot of blue painter's tape, but if you're worried about it, you could use some pixie spray and use that to stick it to the other stencil. I still would probably tape the edges down just because you're having to get that ink through 2 layers of stencils onto your card, so you're going to need to use some pressure. This is also a good place for those small blending brushes. The blending brush I'm using is probably about the size of a quarter. I think using something even smaller would probably make this easier. You just don't want to be able to push so hard on it or it to be so firm that you're pushing the bristles underneath the stencil, especially when you've got a couple of layers like this. That's why I chose the one that I did, because I knew that I put so much pressure that I got the dots, I got underneath the dot stencil. So just pick whatever seems to work best for you. I'm following the same rainbow pattern, and what I'm doing is just going over the small dots are the same color that are underneath, they're just darker. So we laid down kind of a lighter set before, and now we're going back in and making darker dots. So I'm just looking through, making sure I darken up that area a little bit, and you'll be able to tell that on the final result. Okay, let's look at the reveal. Now we got to peel 2 layers of stencils off, so I'm doing it carefully. It looks so good. And so that one layer's off. Now we can peel the final layer and see those white spaces. It's going to look so good. Look at how awesome that is. Okay, so this is the large stencil on bottom, the little stencil on top, and we protected those white spaces. I'll show you what the final card looks like, but we're not going to get into the decorating of this card. We're just going to show backgrounds today to kind of keep us on track with our stencils. The next one, we're going to do the exact opposite, and I'm going to use a different item called the Stamp and Stencil Mat. And like I said, lots of companies have these, but I'm using this one from Simon Says Stamp, and I am going to, it holds your paper down, so it's sticky. So I still will use a little bit of tape just to be safe, but I'm going to use the sticky mat to my advantage. We're going to start with the smallest stencil first, then the large stencil, and I'm going to show you a couple of fails and some ways that maybe this would work better. And so that you can see the difference, I'm keeping with the same color scheme, so the same rainbow kind of in a diagonal. With these little dots, is a little harder to decide where you're going to put your color, but I'm just kind of trying to keep it even and about the same amount throughout. So I'm going to go along, do this, and then I'm going to show you what happens when I put the stencil on top. So with this, remember, the stencils are about protecting the white space. So we're going to have very little white space on this card because there's so many dots. So just know that there's not a whole lot of white space to protect. So I have a little idea on what would make this more, make more contrast on this. So let me speed ahead. So I went on and added the second stencil. I did use tape because that stencil doesn't grab the sticky mat since it's on top of another stencil. And then I'm going back and I'm adding the colors over like we did last time. But here's the thing. So since we've got dots underneath, we're just filling in dots. It's a little hard to get your circle shape so that you can see that these circles are on top. So once I take this off, you can see that there's a little bit, and I'm going to speed ahead so you can see what happens when I take the first layer off. I decide that I'm going to go ahead and remove the bottom layer just to get a little bit more color and so that it looks more like a layered stencil. Let me show you. So you can tell that some of the dots are darker, but it's not easy to make out the pattern of the circles. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to remove this first stencil and put the bigger stencil on top and fill that in. That means there's going to be less white space on this. So if you don't like that idea and you just want some different layered dots, that's fine. But this will add just a little bit of color so that you will definitely see each of the circles with dots. So it's just kind of the backwards of what we did last time, except there's very little white space. So let me show you the difference. Okay, so here's how it looks after going over it with that. And you see how there's very little white space. The dots cover the whole background. So that's the difference in the two. I'm going to pop up the other one, but let me show you this one just a little closer. The best way to get something off a sticky mat is to make sure you bend the mat because it does stick to the paper and you don't want to rip your paper. So just bend your mat and slowly peel that off, okay? Look at that. Super cool. Let's compare it with the other card. Here's the one we just did. Not very much white space on the back of that card. This one has more white space and it's a more defined pattern. Now we're going to look at using a stencil, a single stencil to create a pattern. And using a circle stencil like this is one of the easiest ways to do it. You need complementary colors or colors that are all similar so that you're not making a huge mess. So we're going to use the pink, which is Pinkalicious, and we're going to use the yellow. And I'll show you what we do to shift the stencil. So I'm going to color the whole thing in. So if you're wondering if I'm making a pattern or anything in the background, no, I'm going to use my stencil to create the pattern. So this entire stencil I'm going to color in with pink, and then we're going to shift the stencil and do a different color so that we create a new pattern. Okay, now you want to keep your colors in a similar family, and you'll see I messed this up because I thought, well, maybe I could do a rainbow, but you really want to keep them pretty similar. I'm shifting the stencil to where I want my next circle to be, and the stencil still has pink on it, okay? So if you don't want to mix your colors, you need to clean your stencil in between. For me, I was okay if those mixed because I know that this yellow and the pink make kind of an orangey color that's very nice. So I'm going to go in and I'm going to color the whole thing again. I did not allow a ton of time for my first ink to dry, which will make this more of like, I say of like a cloudy or vellum-y type look. It's not going to have super sharp edges because I'm blending over some of those edges of the pink that are not completely dry, but this is the look that I was going for. All right, look at how cool this looks. So it's a completely different look, just moving your stencil around. So that's one $7 stencil that you could do so much with. So you know I'm doing a series. There's gonna be several of these that are talking about stencils. There's so many things we're gonna do. And this right here, I wanna show you a fail. So I added green. If I was gonna add a different color, I really needed to do a yellow, an orange, a red, something that was similar in color because these are blending together. So let me show you what happens when I put green on here. Starts looking like a muddy mess, and I realize it in time to save this piece, but I'm like, that just does not quite look right to me. It just looks weird, so I add a little bit more color, and then I realize, no, I just got to take this off and salvage what I can. So I want you to realize that you can always cut a strip of what you're making. It doesn't have to be the whole back panel, especially if you mess something up, no big deal. Now we're gonna make the more complicated of the cards, but it is so cool, you're gonna love it. This is the masking strips that I used, and these come in 3 different sizes from Gina K. The first one is an 1/8 of an inch, a 1/4 of an inch, and a 1/2 inch. And they're color coded on the back so that you can match them up if you're having trouble seeing the stripes because it is all white. Then you can look on the back and you've got all these different colors that show you which size it is. So really nice. Can you see those little small ones? That first one's an 1/8 of an inch. Here is a 1/4 of an inch. And then the last one is a 1/2 an inch. We're gonna start with our 1/2 inch to create the outside border. So there's the 1/2 inch. I went on and put my sentiment down, and then I'm gonna line this up along the borders of my card. And you could use some type of ruler to do this, but I already know that my card is cut perfectly, so I'm just following along that edge. I'm using this sticky mat, but I'm leaving just a little tail off of each side of these because it does help hold your piece of paper down, and we're going to be doing some pretty significant stenciling on this background. If you remember, let me pop up the card. Okay, so we're going around these edges with the masking, like I said, leaving a little tail off each one, and I'm going to do this around all 4 edges, and then we're going to create a fun masking design in the center. Now another nice thing about having this sticky mat is that I've got an actual center here. I lined my card up so that I can see the center, and I know I'm going to make kind of like triangled areas that are going to be different colors using different layered stencils, so I can use that as my starting point. And these are the 1/8 inch strips. I am not really trimming these down too much. I'm just creating myself a design, and then we're going to use some masking and create that super colorful card. Now this card idea came from Gina K Designs. I love her masking strips, and we got to make a card very similar to this. I'm going to pop it up at Simon Says Create, and so I learned this from her, and now I'm adapting it to my own card. Here's the one that I made at the Gina K table, so see how awesome this looks. So we're recreating this card with some different stencils, and we're going to use the same rainbow colors that we were using earlier. We're going to need to do some masking, so you can use a masking tape for this. You could use Post-it notes, you can use a piece of paper, but I'm going to use Post-it notes. Once I have my Post-it notes down to protect the other areas, so see I'm going along that masking tape right there. Now I'm going to make my first little area pink, and I'm just going to do kind of a light color of pink because if you remember, each of the sections is just a light pink or a color with a darker colored stenciled through onto it. So on this pink one, I'm just going to make a light color pink, and once I get that laid down, we're going to go ahead and stencil this area because I have it masked off. You don't have to make every section a different stencil, but I decided that that's what I was going to do. I would say when you're doing these stencils over your little area, it's nice to have a very small brush. And so I've got this little small eye crafter blending brush that I can put on my finger, and then I can adjust these hearts however I want them on this section. You do need to be careful. You may need to mask your stencil off if you want to be absolutely perfect, but it worked fine doing it this way for me. So here's how those cute little hearts look. Now I've removed my post-it notes and I'm going to arrange them to cover up the rest. So now that we've moved to a section that has two sides that can be a problem, I'm going to use some post-it notes for both sides. So like I said, you could use some kind of masking tape or something, but I'm using post-it notes, and I'll reuse some of these. Sometimes they get loose, they're sticky a little bit, and you do have to replace them. But this section is yellow. Now I'll keep on going with this and moving through the different stencils, but you've got the general idea. I want to show you the final reveal because it's so fun to pull all of this off and see how cool the card looks, but it just gives it a really cool look. So I love stars, of course, on the yellow section, and I tried to kind of create like whatever my rainbow was. I wanted a stencil that kind of made sense with that color, so that's why I picked the pink hearts, and now I've got the yellow on my stars here. So just kind of think through it a little bit, and it really makes a very cool card. So one thing I want to tell you, I am doing this as a series. So this part of the series is kind of starting to use your stencils in different ways, but I also am going to do more stencil things because I really feel like stencils are one of the most valuable crafting products. You can do so many things with it. So make sure that you hit the notifications, like, and subscribe so that you'll know when that next video comes out. It will probably be a few weeks for the next one, but I'm hoping to continue this series and just keep giving you lots of ideas for stencils. So I'm going to zoom through the rest of this so you can see we did green with polka dots, blue with raindrops, and purple with stripes. Now this is really fun, is to pull this masking tape off. I really love doing this, and it just gives you the nice reveal. Look at those super crisp lines. This masking magic from Gina K is amazing. Now remember, when you have a sticky mat, to fold it. I learned that from Gina K as well, and Jennifer McGuire. So fold this so that it comes unstuck so you're not ripping your paper. Be careful. And then there you go. No sticky residue on the back. I just love how colorful this is. I think that it is so fun, and all these cards were just really fun to create and pretty easy. So I hope you learned some new stencil techniques. Make sure that you have, if you haven't done it yet, that you hit the like, notifications, and subscribe buttons. All the things that I used in this video will be linked in the description, so make sure to check there if you're going shopping. That does help me out. Have a great day. I think you'd love this video, and make sure to stay tuned for the part 2 of this series.